There you go, something different today. There's a thing down in my local castle. We got displaying all like arrows and swords and medieval stuff, like an Easter thing for the kids. You can go down and have a look at the weapons and shoot arrows and all the rest of it. So I'll pop down there and have a look, see if it's any good. Normally down here twice a year they do it. We have quite a lot of bits and bobs on. And this little country park we got, a nice big Norman castle we got, literally not even a mile from my house. So, let's go have a little look.
Yeah? And if you look on here, there's a mark, and that's circle armory. So the armourer's mark is on there, yeah? But every now and then, Dad would say, what's your name? Philip, come here. Let me have a look at your knife. This is getting dirty, boy. Right? He said, if you don't get that cleaned off, it's going to rust. So he would show you how to clean it. And then he would go, I got a butter knife stronger than that. So he would then teach you how to sharpen it on a wheel. So you got your knife and you turn in the wheel and you would sharpen it. Because you hold that, don't just hold the handle because it's hot. This is sharp. There we are. So you have to be very careful when you handle knives. But if you teach a child how to handle a knife properly, then he just uses it for what he needs to use it for. But nowadays, luckily enough, you have no need to carry knives. The only thing happens when you carry knives is you get into trouble. But in the olden days, of course, they had to carry knives, yeah? Okay, the boys got a different knife. They got a fighting ballock. That, quite thick, look, that's thick enough to parry a sword. And this side would have been razor sharp coming down to a point. Yeah? And now you would have been taught to keep the knife there. If you hold it out there, like, hold it out, right? It's very easy to step inside it, turn, and just take it out of his hand. Yeah? But if you've got it back there, you've got to get to it first. Yeah? Okay. Ladies get knives. Now, here, we're looking at a Crusader's dagger. Boys, you can hold it, but don't touch the metal.
Is it heavy?
So it's quite heavy, isn't it? Yeah?
Not heavy for you.
No? Okay. Okay. That is yours. But from the age of 7, from the age of 7, if you're of a noble family, your children would be sent away to be trained, the boys, and the girls. Because don't forget, the girls in a noble family would be being trained for marriage. So they would learn languages, they would learn how to be silent at dinner. They didn't like clever women. Having said that, any knight that had a castle was lucky to have a clever wife, because there's lots of things in history where wives have saved the day when their husbands were away, or because they could converse in different languages, they could entertain foreign guests and things like that. So that was the training the wife went to, the girl went to. Unless she was a bit boyish, in which case, if she had brothers, she probably trained with her brothers, so she was just as good with a sword as they were. Yeah? Okay. Now then, mentioning swords then, let's start with the girls. Now this is a lady's sword. It's very light, and it would have been worn on a sheath on the saddle. Ladies didn't wear them like that unless they were very butch and just loved fighting. Then they dress exactly like a man. But very simple for the girl to draw it and use it. If it was longer, you wouldn't be able to draw it, would you? So it's quite short and it's quite light. Boys, you can hold that one because it's cool. Yeah, come in, inside the boat. Come on. There we are. Well, yes, of course you can. Yeah? So that's quite simple. But now I'm going to give you a man. Oh, sorry. Did you? What? I'm going to give you a man's sword, which isn't far off this one. There he is. Now this is an archer's sword, and the reason it's smaller and lighter is that archers walked everywhere. The last thing you want is a whacking great heavy sword like that one hanging off your belt, because you get 3.5 miles down the road and you throw it over the hedge. Yeah? So here we go, boys.
Maybe 2 hands then if it's too heavy.
Yeah? So much, much lighter. Yeah? Now if you contrast that with a knight's sword, now you can see the weight out in the blade. Yeah? Thank you. This one is, archers always fight in a tight group. So the last thing we need is a sword that swings. So we would use this in a group, and I can parry, thrust, I can cut down that way. I'm not interfering with this guy, and I'm not interfering with that guy. But if that, I've got to swing. So that is used more off the back of a horse, or in combat where you've got a bit more space. Yeah? Next one to look at is a little Viking sword. Now that's an early Viking sword, so you're talking late 10th century or up to the 10th century. Yeah. Guys, what you need to do is try not to touch the blade, and the reason for that is that you've got sweat on your palms and you're... Hey, quiet. You've got sweat on your palms, and in that sweat you've got an acid, and what it does is rust the blade. Yeah, which is why you find that samurai and all warriors don't touch their blades with their hands. Yeah? Okay. Now that's a nice little simple sword. This, how about that as a Viking sword? Now that's for the big boys. That one's for people my size. This is for the real big Danish guys. 6'4", built this wide kind of thing. Well, there's a lot of weight there, be careful. Yeah. So that's quite heavy, isn't it? Yeah. The other sword archers liked is an archer's falchion. So it's very short, it's very light, only hold the handle. Yeah. It's because the metal's starting to get hot. Yeah? So it's quite light, isn't it? Which means when we're walking along, we don't mind that one. Yeah? You know, it has a slight curve at the tip. But the knights have got those as well. The only trouble is the knights one's about that thick. It's much heavier and much bigger and used from a horse. So the knights would use a sword that size at close quarter. Yeah? Well, I take that one from you. Now we go back to the Crusades, and this is a scimitar. It's a copy of one dug up from just outside the walls of Jerusalem. We know that it comes from an Egyptian tribe called the Mamelukes, because this is the sign of the Mameluke, the god Horus. And they were Salah ad-Din's favourite horse soldiers. And they fought on horseback with the sword here. So they would ride along and they would then be able to swing it down if they wanted to cut the horse, or if they were riding against a man on the ground, or across. Yeah? And they could cut right through that arc, which is why the curved blade at close quarters was more efficient than a straight blade. Because with a straight blade, as the guy goes away, pull, you got one cut. Yeah? With this, you can continue cutting because each time he's reaching a different part of the blade as he goes away. Yeah? Again, all the weight in the blade. Be careful of that one because it's got a wicked point. Right? Can you help the boys, because that's quite, I don't want to drop it. Look. Both hands?
Just in case. Give me that. Just in case.
That's it.
Is it actually for me, Jeff?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's going to fit. Yeah.
It's also very, very good.
I had to cut that, you know, it's chasing.
Yeah.
Always going back.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah. Also very good for executing prisoners. No head. Or hand. A thief would definitely have his hand cut off. But the scimitars they used for execution were actually the same as this, but about that long. They were bigger. Cut the head clean off. So this was at close quarters, and what made it so good for them was that on their horse they could swing it around their horse very easily. But the long knight sword that you had to slash with, if you had people all around you, you couldn't swing it. So this, well, you could swing all around the horse, which is why the knights also carried a falchion. So that at close quarters in a melee, they wouldn't use their big swords, they'd use their falchions. And this is where it all begins. 4 years old, and you've both got brothers, you've both got these, and you're banging around, you know, and Dad will come up and say, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't do that. First of all, stand shoulder forward, right? And have the sword there. So hit. Or walk forward. He would teach you 1, 2. And all the time you're being trained, but you don't realise it, because he makes it fun. Yeah? Then as you get older, you still had a wooden sword, but you had lead in here, so that sword was now getting heavy. It was now starting to get close to the weight of a real sword. Yeah? And as you got better, then they would start to take that one away, and you would get a metal training sword. Yeah? And then you would start. And you would progress to these. Hang on a sec. The last one we're looking at. No, it's not as heavy as it looks. And the reason for that is if you made it too heavy, you couldn't swing it. Yeah? Yeah, and it's quite flexible. If it was stiff at that length, one good swipe, you'd snap it. Yeah? Okay. And that one is actually Swiss. And these are what they call the bully boys, the bully boys, because the whole idea of this is to knock somebody to the ground. Once you knock them to the ground, you're either to the throat, yeah, or you've got other men coming up with you that have got small swords and things like that, and they would kill the man because you've just knocked him down. You cannot swing this for very long because it's hard work. Okay, so now we're going to move round a bit.